think we're live. Sometimes it doesn't tell me right away. Okay, we're live. Hey guys, Brief Fauché here. Letting you know right now that I'm still a tiny bit sick, so if I cough in advance, I apologize. Today I'm joined by the talented space opera novelist and blog writer, Jon Del Arroz, Rescue Run, which was nominated for the Alliance Award and made Amazon's top 10 best-selling space opera novels, and is a regular contributor to Hugo Award nominated Castelia House blog. He also likes to touch on issues within the publishing industry, as I do, such as the constant push for diversity and how the industry has become increasingly anti-male. Jon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Bree. Thank you for having me. I'm super honored to be on your show. And yeah, I'm a little sad that I didn't get to be on a Champagne Thursday because it would have been a lot more fun, but we'll take what we can get, right?
I need to bring that show back, so maybe I'll start doing hangouts with people for Champagne Thursday. That's a good idea.
Awesome.
I think I'm going to bring that series back. So I remember first running into your work when you had a little blip on Vox Day's blog, and you discussed how the publishing industry was really anti-male and completely anti-white. As I've come to notice myself over the years, it was a fantastic blog entry. It actually inspired some of the material I used for my Dear Aspiring Authors video.
Excellent. Yeah, I was pretty happy when I got in touch with Vox Day. I had ran into some problems in the publishing industry, just just some soft bigotry going on, and it came from people who would be very highly respected editors and publishers and all that, and they would just treat my works a little differently than they would if it was like a female author or something like that. And they'd make requests of me to change names of characters so that they're, quote, more diverse and all that. Um, just minor things that weren't very troubling. Of course, the moment I sort of came out as a Trump supporter, that changed, and people got really nasty to me. So Vox gave me a little platform to talk about my experiences and how, I basically got shunned from this community that had been smiling at me and pretending to be friends for years, and suddenly not a single person would talk to me.
What was the first hint? When did you really start to notice that the publishing industry wasn't what you thought it was?
I don't know. As I look back, there's a lot of hindsight that I think I could see. There's more than I thought there was. I mean, I had a friend who he's been very popular on the short story circuit. I'm not going to name a name here, but he had a spreadsheet dating back 2-3 years. And what he would do is he would take short stories and send them to certain markets, and then he would just change the characters so that they were females or minorities to other markets. And he noticed that his acceptance rate was drastically higher just changing the names of the characters. I mean, they don't care about any presenting actual female characters as real females or anything like that. They literally just care about the virtue signal. And I laughed it off at the time, saying, "Okay, well that's funny." And I noticed, my short stories were not really making it to market too often at the time. And I guess my next experience was I was dealing with an editor from Del Rey. I actually got past the slush pile and started talking to somebody at this big publisher about the early version of the current book I'm about to come out with, which is now titled For Steam and Country. And she wrote back saying, I really didn't like the character, blah, 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 blah. I think I present a real feminine character as like a real human being and not the Joss Whedon, I'm going to go kick some butt.
Superwoman,
right.
And nailing guys to the wall, and throwing them around with their legs.
For whatever reason, they don't want that. So at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, okay, well, maybe my book wasn't good enough, but she didn't like my character. But everybody else who read it, who was just a reader, loved my character and said, "You do really great characters and you have a very great voice. This is incredible." So yeah, there's a disconnect from what readers want, which is just a story that's fun, and from New York publishing, which they want to make everything into some sort of political crusade.
So funny you should say that, because I see all these really strong female role models, supposedly, like Black Widow, who can throw men down with these fancy flips in the air and stuff. But something I've noticed is that there's a lack of male role models, especially in things like Marvel Comics anymore, where we're told we have to appreciate female Thor and stuff. Do you think feminism has taken over that completely? Do we have any male role models left for young men in science fiction these days?
I think we do, but we got to kind of go into indie works for that, and we have to go back to the past for that. So, if I'm at a comic book store looking at something for my kid, like most parents would do for their 8-year-old or whatnot, they're going to go in and they're going to look at the stands and go, okay, well, I loved Spider-Man growing up, so wait a minute, who's this? This guy's not Spider-Man. This is some street kid, and I don't know who he is. They're going to look at that and not buy it, and that's the bottom line of what happens there. But you can still go back, and they still have the print editions of the old Hulk and the old Thor, and they're good stories, and they're timeless for a reason. They keep continuing through our culture for a reason, and part of it is the fact that they have good male role models, and part of it is the fact that they're just real characters that are interesting and not a political construct. It keeps coming back to that, and I think sales across the board in Marvel Comics, in publishing, in movies are reflecting the fact that the audience doesn't want to get preached to. We already get enough from MSNB, whatever,
Right.
from the press cov fev. So.
Yes. I heard Vox Day talking about that as well, where he said that books back from like the 80s, books like Ender's Game and Dune, are still outselling all these new diverse novels, and it's just making these publishing companies double down even harder, thinking, no, we know we're right, we're going to push this even harder, even though their sales show that these old school novels with old school values are what really sells and appeals to young men.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Vox hit the nail on the head when he said that if you look at just kind of the way men are wired, men often aren't going to buy a book by a female author just because they want to get another man's opinion on something like that, and it kind of goes towards that with a female lead character. Now, both of my books feature female lead characters, and I just wrote that because that's what I felt like doing at the time. But I think I present again as real characters and from a perspective that's not trying to make a political message out of it. And I think that personally, that's where I think the core of the problem is. More than just a shallow demographic.
How
Sort of
dare
thing.
you not insert social justice in your narrative, right?
Terrible.
You horrible person. You actually wrote good characters that were realistic, which, like you said, I guess it was your beta readers or your editors that said they appreciated that even more. It made for a good story when it was just real, right?
Yeah, and I mean my sales are showing that, and my reviews are showing that after the fact. People love it, and they're going to continue to love it, and that's what's great about it.
Now, how do you feel about these traditional publishers that are hiring sensitivity readers because Generation Snowflake might run into some microaggressions in the manuscript they're reading?
I've written a couple blogs about this. I have a good story about it, which hopefully it won't take too long here, which doesn't involve me, but actually involves a very liberal woman who came out with her first book a couple weeks ago. Sorry, but a few months ago, it went out to reviewers and all that, and she's in a traditional publishing press. Her name's Lori Forrest, and her book's called The Black Witch.
I've heard of this.
Heard of this.
I've heard of this controversy.
And what happened was these book bloggers who are just angry, vitriolic social justice people.
I know the ones you mean.
Somebody wrote 8,000 words on her book, 8,000, saying how this was the most dangerous, offensive book of all time.
I gotta read it.
Right, that's exactly what I said. I'm like, can I pay you to write this about my books?
Good publicity.
And the whole concept was that she was not sensitive, and she was not caring about minorities, and she was not this or that. I read the book, and at first it starts out as a nice little adventure story, and it is set in a fantasy world, and she does a good job of this, where she's got her elf people and kind of her fae people, and they're unique and a little different than other fantasy books, which is nice when you read that. And the pure-blooded humans look down on them and are angry at them, and you've got this sort of world where all the races kind of hate each other, which is kind of realistic.
Yeah, seriously.
And none of them are talking to each other, and they're just getting angry, and wars are happening, and people are just slaughtering each other. And I thought, wow, that's kind of how it works. And then he kind of got into this like 300 pages of preaching that, oh, I was just wrong. My race is actually bad, and theirs was, and all these people I'm meeting from other races are just better. And
Womp womp.
yeah, so she got too preachy on for the social justice cause. Well, the review, and it's fine. I mean, like, I thought the book's pretty good. I've talked to this lady quite a bit, and she's a nice woman, and her intention was just say, everybody, let's just get along, right?
Right.
And with that intention, I'm fine with that. I think that's great.
You don't think she went at it with a certain agenda in mind? It was just coming out of her, free flowing.
No, it definitely was coming out of her, and it's definitely earnest. And I don't think that the group, I don't think that the various species were in the book were any allegory for anything in particular.
Good, good.
So I was fine with that, and I thought, you know what, she's got a message. I don't like message fiction personally, but it's fine at the end of the day. Now, this book reviewer went in and saw that these characters were being racist to other characters, and said, "Oh my gosh, these characters are racist. This is terrible. Why are you presenting characters who are racist?" They're so far that you can't even that leftists can't even talk about the problems that they perceive in the world that are on their own side, because they're so out in la la land that that they just go crazy. And I saw some interviews, and Lori said, on the next book, we're going to make sure that sensitivity readers, make sure there's no problem with this. And I wrote a blog on this saying, look, don't listen to sensitivity readers.
Stand your ground.
Stand your ground. Write what you want. And I think it's dangerous. I think it's a soft censorship in the industry. And I think that people are going to start seeing watered down books that all look the same, all sound the same, and quote, are diverse, even though they're all the same.
Do you think they're actually creating an opening maybe for indie publishers out there by being this way?
Yeah, if you kind of look at sales stats, especially in the fantasy and science fiction genres, the indie publishing or the self-publishing has really gone up quite a curve in terms of sales versus what it used to be. And I think that's both a good thing, but I mean, overall, people do still see this as the primary message that's coming out of the industry, and so they don't go to stores and don't buy it. So there is some negative on that, which is just hurting the next generation of readers, I think, finding these independent works. But I think that the independent publishing is poised right now to really take over the industry and make real change happen.
I hope that's the case. I truly do. I read a great article that you wrote about how Marvel Comics is pretty much shooting themselves in the foot, from what it seems, as they add more social justice narratives to their stories. From what I've seen, they sell less and less the more they double down. Do you think that Marvel even has a future at this point?
I think Marvel and DC have more problems than just that. That I think that this is like the nail in the coffin sort of thing. But they've had a distribution system for so long that confines them to these local comic shops, and that's it. They flood the stands with you can't just go and buy the Spider-Man title. There's Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, this Spider-Man, that Spider-Man, and so it confuses readers who want to come in and just be a new reader. And then on top of it, they've had that going for years, and it's been declining for years. Then on top of it, they basically told their audience, we don't want you anymore. We want this new diverse audience to buy things who don't exist.
Even though most of their readers are probably young white male, right?
Yeah, it's that's exactly the problem. I mean, you look at this from a company standpoint, it's just asinine.
Every time I go into a comic book store, I see young white males. I have been to comic book stores, and I'm the only girl in there.
Yeah, they
minority groups are out there vying for comics.
People they don't want them buying their books, and they want other people buying their books. Well, the other people didn't come. At first, the group who does buy the books showed up because you see something bizarre. This is the first gay marriage in comics. It ends up all over the news, so people look at it to go look at a train wreck, right? I mean, that's what people do. So they see their sales temporarily increase whenever these things sort of happen, and then they just float back downward very rapidly. And you do this once or twice, it's one thing, but when you do it across every book on your line consistently for years, your audience is going to abandon you.
It's just sad because they don't really see that there's an opportunity there for them to maybe be different from the crowd that's doing these social justice narratives and keep their sales alive. But when they see that temporary blip in sales, I guess they don't realize that it's because they created controversy and not because they actually created a good product.
Yeah, I mean, instead of creating like a fan fiction where, Thor's really a girl now, nobody wants to read that. If you really want to make your girl superhero and make her something special, make your own thing, do real marketing with it, put your top talent on it, make a new character, and make it your thing. I mean, the part of the other problem is they refuse to do anything new and refuse to take any initiative that will last longer than 6 months to a year as a short term sort of thing, because they're resetting everything all the time for when movies come out in hopes that they'll get a sales spike with the movie.
Something I've noticed, and maybe this is just me trying to sneer at them a little bit, but I feel like when they do a female Thor or something like that and it doesn't sell well, they're kind of reaffirming the fact that the patriarchy did it better.
Uh,
Like this female Ghostbusters thing totally flopped. It's like you just prove that men did it better.
in some ways, I don't know. I mean, I feel like if people would not be lazy and create their own things, and maybe this does actually prove your point in a way. Instead of just copying somebody else's thing and then putting a social justice twist on it, uh, you'll get a better product. I mean, it's really it's about laziness, and it's about being scared to try something new and deviate from the brand.
Yeah.
But the problem is when they do that, they kill their brand.
Speaking of brand and kind of creating your own, so many people are waiting for a gatekeeper in the industry to kind of open up the doors for them. But you went another way, and I noticed you're published by Evil Girlfriend Media. Is that an indie publisher? And what made you decide just to cut the ties with traditional publishing and go indie?
Yeah, they're an indie publisher, and they were really nice to me. Definitely not on our team politically, and that's fine. I mean, obviously they gave me a shot anyway, and it didn't matter. I mean, we can get along if people aren't awful, right?
Right.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, when I had that first experience with Del Rey publisher telling me my character was no good, basically, and everybody else was saying it was great, I didn't want to sit and wait around. And I think that's what I notice a lot of aspiring authors do this. They sit and wait around, and they hope that an agent will pick up their work. I've known somebody who's got a great manuscript, a beautiful dark horror romance sort of thing, and she's been sitting on it for 2-3 years.
Oh, write another book. Jeez, get all this time.
She's writing other books too, but she's been trying to get that to the publisher because she really believes in it, and it's haunting and beautiful. And I mean, probably a much better writer than I am, but because it's kind of long and because it's kind of dark and doesn't really fit into the box, um, publishers just completely ignore her. Agents just completely ignore her. It has nothing to do with the quality of her work. Zero. So you can either go out there and with the internet right now, make your own brand and make your own platform where people are going to find you, or you can sit around and hope that people are going to find you for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they may never find you. It's not a feather in your cap to get published by New York Publishing. They don't do anything for you. They don't provide extra marketing. You're not going to get any benefit from just being on their brand because there's a zillion other authors that they publish. You
Yeah,
might
I've
as well
noticed
just
they publish fewer and fewer debut authors.
right. Yeah, they're actually hunting the indie market now, and what happens is what I see with folk like Michael J. Sullivan. He sells hundreds of thousands of books in his indie publishing, and suddenly the big publisher goes, "Oh, by the way, we think your books are credible now, and we want them." It's like,
Uh, that's hilarious. I wanted to ask you, you have so much going on in your life with a family and you have a career as a journalist, and I would like to maybe in the next year to have my own family and try to balance having a career, my writing, and I'm sitting here thinking, geez, am I even going to have time to write then? And it's so amazing how you balance all that out and you manage to write your own books with all that going on. So what is your writing process like? How do you get it all done?
I gave up a lot, and basically, I don't hang out with many friends anymore. I used to be a big gamer. I used to play board games a lot and spend a lot of my time doing that. I don't get to do that so much anymore. So I write during my lunch break at work. So which would be right now. So today I'm probably not going to get that much writing done.
Well, I'm
Uh,
happy to have you and you're during your writing time.
it's actually more fun.
Cool.
Um, But so I'd write during this time slot typically, or I'd write after the kids go to bed around 8:30 to 11. And so it ends up I don't have too much time to read. I don't watch any TV. It's little things like that go by the wayside. But I try to keep my family time after work from 5 to 8:30 with the kids. And on weekends, I never write. A big secret to what I do though is I type so fast, it's incredible. Um,
I do
so
too. People look at me like freak because I'm just
yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. When it goes like that, you can get a lot done in an hour block. I mean, I've knocked out 2,000 to 3,000 words in an hour block before.
same here. Yeah.
So um, if you can just keep doing that and you do it 5 days a week, I think you'll eventually have a lot of product.
Especially with the typing thing too. I don't think people realize you will get to be a faster typer and you will get to the point where you can write 2,000 words in an hour. And if you can write 2,000 words in an hour, you can write a novel in 2 months.
That's right. And I think the key to it is just not stopping for errors. Because if you get
Right.
caught up in your spelling, then you're going to slow yourself down drastically.
Especially when I first started writing, I got caught in the chapter one syndrome where I kept going back to rewrite or edit chapter one. You got to keep that momentum going. It's all about momentum, I think.
Yeah, I've been there, and I don't know that your second or third chapter one is going to be that much better than your first chapter one. Once you have the whole book in place, that's different. That's when editing kind of starts. But yes, just keeping going is the entire thing to it.
Are you one of those authors who has an idea come to you kind of like a bolt of lightning? I know me, I have to have a notebook on me or an iPhone on me so I can write something down because I get the most random of ideas. So are you like a planner? Are you a pantser or do you outline?
I would say my ideas come kind of like a bolt of lightning. I was sitting around the other day thinking about my next book, and of course, I have demand for my Star Realm sequel to write, which I have to do at some point. And then I'm gonna have to write my sequel to For Steam and Country, which is coming out in a couple weeks here. So I do have to do those, but I had an idea, and it was too fun. I was thinking about sensitivity readers, like we talked about, and just all these terrible things. And I was thinking, you know what? Let's how can I be as insensitive as possible? I don't want to go in and just like type out the N word or things like that. I think that's crude, and that's just bad behavior. I wouldn't do that. But my idea just popped in my head at the time, and I was like, well, I'll just write Deus Vult in space, you know. And I thought about it, and I've got this whole concept of actual space crusaders going out and retaking lands for God in space.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it's beautiful. So I that idea just hit me, and then suddenly I could just envision. I envisioned everything about it. I envisioned their drop ships and their armor and their weapons and all the fun stuff that's going to come along with it. It's not going to be too messagey. It's really just going to be a lot of action and fun. So it just hit me right then. But when it hits me like that, I outline like crazy. So I will write like an 8 to 10 page outline of my book as I come up with it. And what I do is, as I write each section, which I usually break it up into chapters or scenes, if something's not working in the plot, I revise it during my first draft. So my structure of my books ends up really tight, even through the first draft, which is really helpful.
Nice. How long does it usually take you to write a first draft?
About 2 months, like you were talking about.
About 2 months, yeah. How long from that then generally to having the book finished? Have you written enough novels to kind of have like a system going?
Yeah, so I've got four written now, and one published in a couple weeks, and I'm about 40% into editing the third one. Just started writing this Dave's Fulton Space one. So I would say what I like to do is I like to get my book finished, and then I like to just completely ignore it for like 3-4 months. So I
Hmm.
just forget about what I wrote,
I've heard
and then
about a
I
lot of
don't.
authors doing that, yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't come back to it thinking it's the greatest thing in the world, and I can tear it apart where it needs to be. I can view it as somebody else's work at that point, I guess.
Yeah, you've been away from it for long enough to see it with new eyes.
Yeah,
Do you ever play that game like where you eavesdrop on people in a cafe and you hear a line and you're like, that's going in the book?
all the time. I love it. I try to incorporate things my friends say, things I say. Um, I posted yet, but about the character in my book that's about to come out, whose name is Zara von Monocle, and it's a ridiculous name. And early reviewers, it's either you love it or you hate it, right? My thought was on this: there's a lot of generic fantasy names, of Elfendel or whatever,
Ugh.
and like nobody remembers those type of names. So I thought, if I have a name like Zara von Monocle, everybody will remember it. And that was the thought behind that. But actually, it was at a convention selling books, and I just saw somebody's name tag, and it said Zara on it, and I was like, "Is that a real name?" And she's like, "Yeah, my parents wanted to call me Sarah, but they just wanted to write it a little differently." I'm like, "That's so cool," and then I just stole it.
I stole the name of a girl I went to college with, but she had she had the spelling completely different where it wouldn't have sounded the way it spelt. So I just flipped around the spelling to make it sound the way it was spelt. Yeah, because I was like, no one's going to get that spelling.
Yeah, and I thought about that. My original title for this was actually Zara's Airship, and I thought if people are Google searching this, there's no way they're going to find Zara's Airship.
You need to have a unique name so when people Google search it, they can find it, right?
Right, but you got to have an easy spelling, and so that's where
Right.
I just came up with a few titles. And another thing I like to do is I like to crowdsource with my fans things like titles. So I had a few different titles, and one of them was for Steam and Country, and that resonated a lot because it's got a patriotic theme to it, which I think my fans like,
Yeah,
and it just sounds cool too. So.
it does. Steam and Country. I like that. What got you interested in space opera? Because that's a genre I haven't really delved into.
I just as a kid, I was watching Babylon 5 and Star Trek Deep Space Nine on TV, and I just wanted those worlds, and I wanted to write in those worlds, and that never ended up happening, of course. But but I could make my own and make them better at this point. So it was mostly those TV shows, and then I got hooked on books, on the books in the genre after that.
It's funny you should say that because a lot of my stories have happened that way too, where it's something that I'm yearning for. It's like a world that I'm yearning for, or an adventure I want to go on, or how I wish things were. How I wrote one of my first novels I wrote was I was watching a TV show and I thought one of the plot lines was weak, so I just rewrote the plot line. Like, this is how it should have been.
Yeah, I do that a lot, very very much so. I'm sitting. I really want to rewrite. There's the whole trope of you go into an MMO or a video game or a virtual reality, and you get trapped in there, and if you die in there, you die in real life, and I hate that. I see it in every TV show, everything for a long time, and I want to rewrite that to where people are going into a video game and there's a different plot line going on. I don't know what it is yet. I haven't been able to come up with it, but that one's bothered me, especially in Ready Player One is an example for that. It's one of those books that was hailed by the Hugo in crowd as the most wonderful thing ever, and it is basically that plot. And then it's got some virtue signaling in it too, so it makes it even better to them.
That's why I didn't read it.
So I want to fix that, and there's a lot of things I want to fix. We could talk for hours on that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, they're creating such an opening where they like such cliche things that have been done so many times, where I open a fantasy novel and I'm like, well, I've read this 5 times over, where it won't even be that difficult to make something really creative that maybe sparks people, because they just write the same things over and over again, just with different wrapping. It's like the hero's journey that plotline has been done so many times. When I saw The Force Awakens, I was like, oh, it's the hero's journey again. It's A New Hope, just wrapped up differently with a female.
It was a new hope, and having parts of Force Awakens and replotting that to what I like a lot better. I've a lot of criticism I've seen about the new Star Wars movies in general. They've distilled it for the woman hero concept in a way that she don't need no man,
I hate that.
to the point where they don't allow romance into movies anymore. Force Awakens, there's this clear tension between Rey and Finn, where it looks like they're going to have this romantic relationship, and then he just ends up kind of being a cuck, right?
Right.
And then at Rogue One, you kind of got the same situation there, who were so blamed. Uh, they don't allow those to progress. If you look at the original Star Wars, I mean, the second movie, Luke and Leia had a real romantic going on, and the infamous brother sister kiss is of course there. And then when that developed in the second movie with Han Solo, I mean, so much tension and made you care for the characters so much that removing that for the sake of a political message, which just makes a bland and boring movie.
It does. I totally agree. I wanted to ask you what your editing process is like because I have been editing the same trilogy for a couple years now. So I love hearing other authors talk about their editing process so I can get new ideas as far as how to tackle this.
I wish I had a good process on this, and same sort of situation. I go through, I wait several months and look at it. I usually do a pass straight through, where I kind of read it, and then I kind of line edit along the way a little bit, and then I go, okay, well this section's weak. This section I actually repeated myself because I had two scenes that did the same thing, and I make notes on those and either remove those or change the scenes as necessary because my outline to begin with is so structured and I've structured it through the first draft. I don't have a ton of that, but I usually have 2 to 3 scenes per book. This most recent one, my ending didn't work at all in the original version, and I knew it. I just knew it in the back of my head, and so I rewrote the ending. But that's my first pass. My second pass, I usually go through and I look for specific characters, and then I give them verbal tics and things like that so that they come across as more unique sounding when they talk, more unique sounding in their perspective. I make sure to just dial up some of their quirkiness and habits and things like that. And then I just go through and I line edit. I print it out, read it aloud to myself, and just fix the sentences for my third pass on it typically.
Do you have like beta readers that you send it to?
Yes and no. I mean, I've got a couple people I send things to periodically. Sometimes I just go with it. I don't always do that. I think crowdsourcing your content gets a too many cooks situation a lot of the time. I was in a writing group for a long time, and it was the snooty science fiction literary people for the most part. I like them. I mean, if you're watching this, I don't dislike you as a person. But
Got that out there.
but they just definitely had that quality to what they like about what they're reading and all that. And so they'd pick apart some of my stuff as trite and blah 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 blah, and my cultures aren't developed to their tasting, which I don't think are correct. I think I do a pretty good job with that. And they'd pick at the books, and I just it would cause me to lose confidence in the story, and I don't think that's super healthy. I know a lot of writers are doing that now. I think it got popular when Brandon Sanderson and his crew got the whole Writing Excuses podcast going, and they talked about their writer groups and et cetera. And it caused this whole culture of these kind of group readers kind of talking about your books and criticizing it. And it's helpful to some extent to get a little bit of feedback. But I would just find an editor you trust and just get there with 1 or 2 people so that it doesn't lose its focus. I think that's a better way to do things.
I'd have to agree. What books would you say really influenced you growing up and made you develop as an author?
Let's see. So my books, despite the patriarchy ruling publishing, I mostly read female authors growing up, and I think I mean they're big names, so it's I mean the narrative's so dumb. But Anne McCaffrey meant a lot to me growing up. I read her books. I thought her Dragon Riders of Pern was beautiful. My favorite concept of hers is actually the Crystal Singer, which is a really cool science fiction concept. And she meant a lot to me. I loved it. I loved her work. I love the way that, again, she just presented romance as part of the plot, that drives the characters. And I think that's a part of human condition that is just so ingrained in us that it makes stories stronger if you emphasize it correctly. So you'll see me doing a lot of that. And I actually did a paper on her, an interview paper when I was in high school. And I said, "Can I ask you questions?" And she said yes. And I mailed her back, and um, she sent me questions back, or she sent me answers back. So just having that experience in high school when I was pretty in awe of this woman and how wonderful she was meant a lot to me too. My other favorite influences are Lois McMaster Bujold, who is another space opera writer, wonderful one, probably the best prose writer I think alive today. And then Elizabeth Moon, who also does space opera. So I got into them.
You're giving me some great authors to look up because I don't think I've read any of them.
Nice.
What do you think has been your greatest struggle as an author and getting to be self-published and just your whole process?
Um, I think it was the confidence to just go out there and put out your work. Originally, I mean, it's kind of a misnomer that I've not self-published anything. So I had my Evil Girlfriend Media on the first book. I'm going to be with Superversive Press, who did the Forbidden Thoughts anthology um, earlier this year. That got some buzz on the internet for my second book here. But they're small press, and it is still kind of putting yourself out there without a safety net, I guess.
Mhm.
And just gaining the confidence to do that, just say I'm done editing. It's my book's good. I don't need to listen to a bunch of beta readers and just revise endlessly. That's the biggest challenge to overcome at first. Once you've done it once and you've gotten good positive feedback from readers, I think it gets a lot easier because you understand at that point, well, people are going to like what I write. I've resonated, and that's the goal. And if you don't get that the first time, keep putting it out. Just put out product. Somebody will find you. Somebody will like it. You'll find your niche.
I always figure if I like my work, there's going to be at least one other person out there who will like it.
Gotta be for sure.
What would you say is the best advice you could give to somebody who's a total newbie, who's an aspiring author? They're just sitting down there to a blank page and they want to write their novel.
Whew, at that point, I guess just write. I mean, you just got to do it every single day. I mean, we've talked about the 2 to 3 thousand words a day, and then you'll have a book. You got to do that, and it's a total attrition game. The people who are not authors and are not doing this and are quote aspiring authors and stay aspiring authors just don't complete works and don't put them out there, and give up basically. So just like Galaxy Quest says, never give up, never surrender.
Yes, great quote, yes. And I wanted to add to authors out there, they don't realize that you do get faster at it. You do get faster at typing. You do get better at managing your time. Would you say that?
Absolutely. I could sit down and I know exactly how long a scene will take me to write, exactly what I need to allot for it at this point because I've done enough of them. David Gerald I was in a writing class from him several years back, and he's definitely not a friendly person to our cause, but he did have some good writing advice at the time. And I've heard it, in various forms in different industries that you got to put in your 10,000 hours or whatever. And his version was the first million words are your practice. Once you've written a million words, you kind of know what you're doing at that point. And I agree with that. You just got to crank out a million words as fast as you possibly can.
Do you have a favorite quote from an author that really inspires you?
Yeah, I got one right here that I pulled up, and it's from Vox Day. And Vox Day really gave me a platform when I didn't have one before. When I started having trouble with the SJWs who wanted to stop me from speaking, try to ignore me and diminish my work right after it came out and right after I kind of outed myself, I talked to him, and he just gave me very simple advice, and I didn't take it at the time. Um, it was a bit early on, and it took a little more pushing from that crowd being awful to me for me to finally go with his advice. But he said this to me. He said, "Learn to go public. One reason they get away with it is because everyone they do it to tries to keep it quiet. You shouldn't." And I agree. I think as conservatives and as Christians, we often get told, turn the other cheek, be normal, be silent, just stay in your little zone, work hard, don't rock the boat. And I think that's completely wrong. It's you have to be out there, you have to be vocal. If you don't have a voice, if you're not speaking truth, nobody wants to hear from you, and so just do it.
I completely agree. That's one of the things I had to do because I experienced an SJW attack as well. And honestly, keeping going makes you feel tougher and teaches you a thing or two, I think.
Big time. It just when you keep at it and you get some nice viewers, in your case, you start to realize that people like what you're saying and that you're not alone.
Hmm.
And it does make you stronger at the end of the day, and it makes you put out better product. I mean, I've watched several of your interviews, and you just get tighter and better at this every time you do it.
Well,
And
thank you.
I hope that as I write, my books will be better with each one that comes out as well.
Speaking of your books, tell me about your new project. What has you excited about it? Tell us about it
All
so
right,
my
my
viewers will
new book.
go buy it.
I'm deviating from space opera. So when my book kind of went viral because Vox Day and John C. Wright and Peter Grant and some other great authors were kind of plugging Nick Cole, shout out to Nick Cole.
I like Nicole.
We're kind of plugging it. I realized, oh crap, I need to get out something as soon as possible. So the closest thing that I had ready was this steampunk novel that I'd been kind of sitting on for a little bit. And so I'm shifting genres a little bit and hoping that my space opera fans will like this. I think it's actually better than my last book. It's tighter, it's just more adventure-y, and it's just a lot of fun. And I think my character's a little deeper because I actually went into a first-person female perspective. And a lot of people who have read it go, "Was that weird for you?" And I said, "Yes." Uh, I did it intentionally to see if I could do it.
I haven't written a male perspective yet, like a male first person character, because I'm a little scared. So
Try it.
that'll be a challenge for next year. I got to try
Try
it.
it. It definitely is it's a hard thing, but I think I nailed it. You guys will have to tell me.
Cool.
Um,
I definitely want to read it. Everybody go buy his book when it's out. When is it
Thank
out?
you. June 15th is going to be the release date. It's for Steam and Country, and it's about a girl who inherits her airship from an adventurer father. And she lives in a fantasy world where basically the king gives lands and etc. to his vassals. This one is she gets an airship, obviously, and she goes off to try to help fight for her country. And as a 16-year-old farm girl, she's not very good at it, obviously. So adventure ensues along the way, and some twists happen, and she just has to overcome her inexperience. She has to just persevere, and that's how she's going to win at the end of the day.
Yeah, don't give away the ending because I want to read it, and I'll do a book review on it on my channel as soon as I get through
Thank
it.
you. I appreciate that. So,
So I just realized that I had two of the same question kind of going along there. So that's about all I had for you. And I told you I wanted you for about an hour. So that's what I've kept you for. So why don't you tell my viewers a little bit about your blog and where they can find you in the future?
Sure. For Steam and Country will be on Amazon, and it'll be on there with my current book, Star Realms Rescue Run, which you kindly mentioned at the beginning of this, which is actually still selling like hotcakes. I'm surprised that it keeps going.
Got good reviews online. I want to read it.
I'm excited. But like I said, I think this new one will be even better. The blog I write for is just my website. It's delarroz.com, DELARROZ.com. And I write every day. I write book reviews. I write comic reviews. I saber rattle against the people in the industry who blackball. I'm big about free speech. Free speech is my whole thing that I'm really all about. And then occasionally I also try to write about Christianity and Christian topics because I care about that, and I eventually, hopefully, will. Part of my goal is to witness to the science fiction and fantasy community because they're so hostile against.
They are.
All but so I try to do that to some extent. Right.
You are one of our fighters. You are one of our fighters in the sci-fi fantasy world. I'm happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And I guess I'll wrap this up now because I don't have any other questions for you. But thank you so much for joining me today. And my viewers, go check out his new novel coming out. I will review it when it comes out, and I'll have a book review up hopefully within the first few weeks of it being out.
Thank you, Bray. This was very fun.
Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.